Very good day to Mr. Ali. Today I'm going to be presenting my 3D pipeline case presentation of 5 objects as well as a 360 view of my isometric room. My name is Kailash Kumaran and my TP number is TP071408, and this I'll be presenting for the module 3D pipeline. So for the first object I'll be explaining is my tall lamp shade. Okay, so my first step was making the base. To make the base of my lamp, I used a polygon, which is a cylinder. And to begin it, I first scaled the polygon to a small size as well as scaling it thinner to make the base of the lamp. And next I had to do was create the lamp stands, which was next to the lamp shade. So how I did that is I created another polygon, which is a cylinder, and then I scaled it longer and thinner and smaller to follow the reference image that was chosen. And once I already made the first one, I just duplicated the next one. Once the stand and the base was done, next I had to do was the shade of the lamp. To do the shade of the lamp, I created another polygon, which is a cylinder as well. And then I switched to face mode and selected the top and bottom of my polygon. Then once both area of the bottom and top was selected, I just deleted it and just left the sides of the cylinder only. And once that was done, I just had to scale it, make sure the size is following the image reference that I chose in the beginning. And once the lampshade was done, the stand and the foundation was done, I just combined all 3 objects together. And once all the objects was combined, I just had to add some texture and lighting for the object, where for the foundation I use is silk texture to give following the reference image. And for the stand, I chose the color gray to give the look of steel. And for the shade of the lamp, I use a texture called fancial shades. And at the end, I just added a mesh lighting inside of the shade to give the look of the lamp is on and how it look like. So for my second object is a chair, and how I begin to make the chair. Firstly, I had to make the legs of the chair. So to begin, created a polygon, same as earlier, I created a cylinder polygon. I scaled it longer and thinner to make the legs. So first I had to create 3 different polygons, and I had to make sure the size of each of the polygons are same. And once it was done, I just had to strategically just place it correctly and combined all 3 objects. Once all the objects was combined, I just had to switch to face mode and select the edges of each of the cylinders, where the top, the bottom of each cylinders, and then I just had to use the bridge, which is over here. Once I use the bridge, the polygon will combine, and then I had to increase the divisions and switch the curve type to blend. Once that was done, it'll give a smooth curve for the leg of the chair. And once that was done, I just duplicated the finished part of the leg and duplicated it too. And once I had 2, I just did the same, repeated the same steps. I created a cylinder and scaled it longer and placed it between both sides of the legs, this side and this side. And then I did the same process where I used face and selected the edges and used bridge and increased the divisions and switched to curve type to blend. And with that, I'm done with the legs of the chair. Next was making the upper part of the chair. To begin making the upper part of the chair, I first created a cube, and once the cube was made, I first scale the size correctly to the size of the top area of the legs of the chair. And once it was placed, I just switched to face mode, and I deleted the sides of the chair except the behind and the bottom one. And once I deleted it, it's just left with these two. Now, once that two is already created, I just switched to the edge and selected the bottom edge of the chair, which is the side. And once you're selected, I just beveled it. And once I beveled, I reduced the fraction and increased the segments of the chair. And it gave a curve at the end of the chair. Besides that, I just had to make the size of the chair following the image that I chose. So from the image I saw, the top part of the chair is being pushed inside. So I just switched to vertex mode, selected the top and just moved it in. And once I was done, I just scaled the chair. I used extrude and pulled out the chair, making it more thick. And once that was done, I just selected the edges. Following the image reference, I just saw which areas are curved. I selected those areas of the chair. And once I was done, I just beveled it by reducing the fraction and increasing the segment. And that's how I get the curved edges for the chairs wherever is needed, following the image reference. And once the leg and the top part of the chair is done, I just combine both objects together and just applied colors. The colors I chose was, for the top part is white, and for the bottom of the leg is gray. So the white is following the image reference that I chose, and the gray is giving a look of metallic for the chair, and it's also following the reference image. Now, for my third object is the coffee table. So for the coffee table, the legs, I repeated the same process I did for the chair, but the only thing that's different is the placement of the object. So I did the same thing, created a polygon, which is a cylinder polygon, scaled it longer, and once I was done, instead of tilting it to the left and right, I just remained it straight as the image that I chose. The legs is straight instead of tilted. I then continued by just switching to face mode, selecting the sides of the cylinders, the edges. And once that was done, I did the same process where I bridged it, and then I just increased the divisions and increased the divisions, and then switch the curve type to blend. It gave a smooth edge. And once it was done, I repeated it for the longer version and for the short version. As my coffee table, there is one long table and one short one. So the legs was done. Now I had to do is surface of the object. As the table is a square surface on top, it was simple, where I just scaled the cube shorter. I created first the cube and then I scaled it shorter, and then I expanded it. So I had to do two, where for the first one is just a short one, and the second table is a longer one. And once both objects was done, I just had to combine the surface of the table with the legs. So I just combined the short table first with the legs, and then I followed by the long table with the legs. Once the object was combined, I just had to apply some textures on it. And so I chose for the legs of both of the tables, I chose is black, as it's following the image reference. And for the surface of the table, I use a light wood color texture. Followed by that is my fourth object, which is a 4-drawer cabinet. To begin making the cabinet, I first had to create the frame of the cabinet. So firstly, I used is a cube. I first created a cube, and then I had to do the top surface of the cabinet first. So I just scaled the cube shorter, and then I duplicated another cube and just scaled it shorter as well. As the image showed that the first surface of the cabinet is longer than the second one. So I first made that first. And once that was done, I began to make the cabinet frames, the inside of the frames and the side. So I repeated the same steps. I created a cube and then I scaled it shorter and thinner, following the same size as the image reference. And once that was done, I just duplicated it to 2. And then from the top surface, I also duplicated it below. And from that, I made all 4 of the cabinet. And once that was done, I just simply created the inner frames as well using the same steps. I just used the cube, scaled it correctly to the perfect measurements, and I just duplicated another 2 more. And by that, I finished the frames, the inner frames, as well as the outer frames of my cabinet. Next was making the drawers. Making the drawers was similar steps to the first step, where I just created a cube, I scaled it thin, and I had to measure it, making sure like the bottom surface of the drawer is long and the sides is also the same size, but it's a bit more shorter, and the back part, the behind part of my drawer is short. And for the front part of my drawer, I had to not make it the same size, I made it a bit slightly more longer. So once I was done, I just placed it first together to make sure that the measurements are correct, and then I combined it at the end. Once the drawers was done and the frames of the cabinet was done, I just had to combine it. So the drawers all combined, the frames are combined. Now it's just placing the drawers inside the cabinet and making sure all fits correctly. And once it was done, I just duplicated the drawer from the first drawer. I just duplicated another 3 more. And for the last step of making my drawer, I just added some texture, which is 3 plywood texture. Why I chose this texture is the image reference that I chose. The texture was similar to this, so I tried using it, and 3 plywood texture fits well. And for my last object is a L-shaped table. So to begin making the L-shaped table for my room, firstly I created a cube, scaled it shorter and wider following the size of the image reference. And once that was done, I just used face mode, pulled out, I extruded the side face of the table and extruded it out more. So making, as you can see here for the L table, I first had to create the first one, and using the sides, I extruded it, made another one longer, which is here, and then using this side, I did the same thing. I just selected that face and I also extruded it out. So why I had to do this is because I could, in order for me to make a curve in the center over here for my L-shaped table, I had to make sure there's an edge line for me to bevel. So once that was done, I used the side, the edge, and I selected the edge, as you can see here. And once I was done, I beveled it. I used the bevel tool, and then I reduced the fractions and making sure the curve is correct following the image that I chose as reference. So once it's done, I just had to reduce the fraction and increase the segments, and that gave a perfect smooth circle for the L table. And I also noticed from the image that the edge of the table, one side of the edge of the table is cut to half. So I did the same thing, just select the edge, beveled it, but this time I reduced the fraction but didn't increase any segments, as it's just a solid straight cut at the edge. And also at the sides of certain sides of the edge of the table is curved. So I selected the left side as well as the right side and repeated the same steps by reducing the fraction and increasing the segments. Once all of that was done, I just added some colors to follow the image reference that I chose, which was black. Now, next I'll be showing is my isometric room once it was finished, a finished product. So what I use for my camera movement is a turntable camera, and it's going to be moving 360 to show uh, the isometric view of the room. As you can see, the color scheme I chose was warm colors to give a sense of comfort into my room. You can also see the objects that I made. There's 13 objects altogether. Overall, making the room, it was hard, but at the same time, I got to learn my skills, improve my skills in building the objects more better. And that is the 360 view of my isometric room. And I use 900 frames, as Mr. Ali informed us in class. We were told to render 900 frames to get 30 seconds of each of the 1 second of each frame to get altogether is 30 seconds. And that's how I made the turntable view of my isometric room. And once that was done, I just took some angle shots inside of my room. From the first image, you can see is my shelf, where it consists some of the books placed on top of each other, as well as some vase, which is size from small coming to big. I also applied some textures for each of it. For the books, I applied some of my favorite comic books such as Marvel, DC, and even some animated cartoon, which is Diary of the Wimpy Kid. For the vase, I searched on Google and found some vase textures where it's ceramic glass textures. And from the bottom image here, you can see is a view of my study table desk, as well as a plant next to it. And on the third image here, you can see is the view of my functional bed, as well as the coffee table. And last but not least is the desk view, where there is a container holding the pen and also some books placed on top of the desk. And that is all from me. Thank you for listening and thank you for your time.